All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back for another deep dive with us. So this time, we got a really interesting one, I think. You guys wanted to know what not to eat with milk. So that's what we're gonna dive into today. And we found some really interesting stuff from the Times of India by way of VnExpress International, which it's a pretty popular newspaper over in Vietnam.
Yeah, pretty interesting stuff for sure.
Yeah, some of this is going to really surprise you, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're so used to just like, throwing things together,
Yeah.
especially with milk, like
Yeah.
you have a glass of milk and you have your snack.
Right?
But turns out some of these things really don't mix.
Yeah, so we're talking about, milk as this like nutritional powerhouse, but some foods can like really mess with your digestion or block you from getting all those nutrients. So let's get right into it. I think the first one here is something that a lot of people will recognize. I know I've been guilty of this one. The classic banana and milk. Your banana smoothies.
Yeah.
Turns out that might not be the best thing for your gut.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting when you think about it. Both of those things, bananas and milk, they digest really slowly. Bananas, they get all that like complex sugar in them.
Right.
And milk's got its own kind of like protein and fat thing going on. So you put them together and it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Your digestive system is not happy.
Yeah, they were saying in this Times of India article, they had a doctor from Mumbai who was explaining that the combination of milk and banana is just so heavy. And it takes forever to digest. And he even said you'll end up feeling fatigued.
Absolutely. And it's not even just about being tired. You're going to get that bloating, that discomfort.
Right. So that sluggish feeling I get after my banana smoothies, that's not just in my head.
No, it's real. It's your body telling you something's not quite right.
Okay, well, so much for that healthy breakfast myth, I guess. All right, so this next one is a little more surprising and maybe even a little scary, I have to admit. We're talking fish and milk. I have to admit, I never even thought about this combination. It's not like something I'd normally put together.
Right.
But apparently this is a big no-no.
Yeah, this one is less about like just feeling icky and more about, you could be putting your health at risk.
Oh, wow.
Combining fish and milk can actually increase your chances of getting food poisoning. You could end up with stomach cramps, even skin problems. It's kind of a reminder that even foods that seem totally harmless on their own, you put them together and whoa.
Right.
It could be a recipe for disaster.
So, like, I'm imagining, like, you're having some sushi, and then you accidentally have a sip of milk, and then you get a stomach ache or something.
Yeah, you don't want that.
No, I don't. So I gotta ask, like, why does this happen? What is it about fish and milk that just don't mix?
Well, the article didn't get into like all the nitty-gritty science details, but it seems like it's the proteins and the enzymes in fish and milk. They just don't get along. Like they clash in your digestive system.
So it's better to err on the side of caution, I guess.
Right. Keep those two separate.
Okay. Well, moving on, let's talk about something that I think will make a little more sense to people. Citrus fruits and milk. I mean, we've all seen what happens when you add lemon juice to milk, right?
Yep.
It curdles instantly.
Exactly. So you definitely don't want that happening in your stomach.
No.
I mean, think about that.
That's not a pretty picture.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Because those citrus fruits, they're so acidic.
Right.
And that acidity, it reacts with the protein in milk.
And that's what causes the cuddling.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that can lead to, nausea, indigestion, even vomiting.
Okay, so not a good idea. I can't help but imagine someone thinking like, oh, I just had a glass of orange juice. I'm going to have a glass of milk now.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, no, that's a recipe for disaster. Okay, so we've got bananas, fish, citrus fruits, all on the do not eat with milk list. What's next?
Okay, get ready for this one. Melons and milk.
Melons and milk? Really? They both seem so harmless. Like,
I know, right?
what could go wrong with that?
Well, it turns out this combo can actually really mess with your digestion. Melons, they're full of water, right?
Right.
And milk, as we talked about it, can have this like natural laxative effect.
Uh-huh.
So you combine those two things, it's like they amplify each other in all the wrong ways. You get bloating, gas, discomfort.
Okay, I'm definitely rethinking my fruit salad and milk pairings now. So we're 4 for 4 on surprising food combinations to avoid. What's the final culprit on our list?
Last but not least, we have a pairing that I think a lot of people are going to be familiar with. Salted snacks and milk.
Yeah.
Think about it. You have your bag of chips.
Reaching for that glass of milk.
It just seems so natural, right?
Yeah, I've definitely done that.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing you're going to tell me that's a bad idea.
You got it.
Okay.
Here's the thing. Those salty snacks, they dehydrate you. And And that throws your electrolyte balance all out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
And then you add milk into the mix, which also has its own electrolytes.
Right.
It just disrupts that balance even more.
Yeah.
You'd end up with bloating discomfort. You just feel, ugh.
This is blowing my mind. I never would have thought that so many common food pairings could be so problematic. So we got bananas, fish, citrus fruits, melons, and now salted snacks, all on the do not eat with milk list. Who knew?
Right.
This is wild.
It really makes you wonder what other seemingly harmless combinations we might be missing.
Yeah.
But that's what these deep dives are all about, right?
Exactly.
Uncovering the hidden truths about the things we eat and drink.
Absolutely. And you know what? As much as I'm surprised by these findings, I'm also kind of excited. It's like this whole new world of food combinations has opened up to me. It's time to start experimenting and see what works best for my body.
I love that attitude.
Yeah.
It's all about being mindful and paying attention to how your body responds to different foods. It's a journey of discovery, and it's really empowering.
I'm feeling empowered already. But before we get too carried away with our newfound food wisdom, let's take a closer look at why these milk pairings are so problematic. Like, what's going on at a deeper level? What's the science behind it all?
That's a great question. Let's unpack it. When it comes to food and digestion, it's really all about understanding how different components interact. It's like this delicate dance happening in your gut. And some partners, they just clash on the dance floor. And that's kind of what's happening with these milk pairings.
Okay, I like that analogy. So in the case of milk and bananas, what are the dance moves that are clashing?
Well, we talked about slow digestion, but let's break that down a little further. Bananas, they're full of resistant starch. That's the type of fiber that takes a while to break down. And then milk, on the other hand, it's got lactose. That's a sugar that needs a specific enzyme called lactase to be digested. So when you overload your system with both of those things, it can lead to fermentation in your gut. Yeah, it's basically like the bacteria are having a party in there, and they're producing a lot of gas.
So like a bacterial mosh pit in your stomach.
Pretty much.
No wonder we feel bloated and uncomfortable. Okay, so what about the fish and milk combo? That one really freaked me out.
Yeah, that's a valid concern.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the importance of food safety. The article didn't go into the specifics of like why it's bad.
Yeah.
But it's likely because of the potential for bacterial contamination. You know, fish, especially certain types like shellfish, they can have bacteria that can cause food poisoning. And milk being so nutrient rich, it can actually create an environment where those bacteria can thrive.
Oh, wow.
So if you happen to eat some fish that hasn't been cooked properly, and then you have some milk with it, it could be bad news.
So you're basically creating a bacterial buffet in your stomach.
Yes, something like that.
Definitely not something I want to experience. Okay, let's move on to citrus fruits and milk. That one makes sense to me intuitively, but can you break down the chemistry behind it?
Absolutely. So citrus fruits, as we know, are highly acidic, and that acidity, it can cause the proteins in milk to curdle. It's basically the same process that happens when you make cheese. The acid denatures the proteins, which causes them to clump together.
Right.
So imagine that happening in your stomach.
Not a good visual.
No, not at all. And that curdled milk, it's really hard to digest, which can lead to those unpleasant symptoms like nausea and vomiting.
Right, so it's not just about it looking gross. It actually messes with the whole digestion process.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about the melons and milk combo? That one still surprises me. They both seem so harmless on their own.
Yeah, I know, right? But the issue here is that combination of high oil content and the potential laxative effect. So melons, they're mostly water. And when you combine that with milk, which can have a natural laxative effect for some people, it can speed things up way too much in your digestive system, like everything's moving too quickly. And your body doesn't have enough time to absorb all the good stuff.
Right, so you're saying it's not just about specific ingredients clashing, but also about the overall balance and pace of digestion.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is fascinating. Okay, and what about the last culprit on our list? Salted snacks and milk.
Right, so this one has to do with your electrolyte balance. Salty snacks, as you know, they make you thirsty. And that's because they dehydrate you. They pull water out of your cells, including the ones in your digestive tract. And then you add milk into the mix, which also has its own set of electrolytes. It could just disrupt that balance even more, so you end up feeling bloated, uncomfortable, just overall not great.
So like a salt and liquid tug of war happening in your gut.
Kinda, yeah.
No wonder it feels so uncomfortable. This has been incredibly eye-opening, honestly. I'm rethinking so many of my food habits. But I have to ask, is it really that bad to eat these foods with milk? I mean, people have been doing it for ages, right?
Well, that's a good question. And it's important to remember that everyone is different. What might cause one person digestive distress might not bother someone else at all. It also depends on the quantity and how often you're doing it. Like a little bit of banana in your milk smoothie every now and then. Probably not a big deal. But if you're having it every day and feeling sluggish after, it might be worth reconsidering. It's really all about listening to your body and paying attention to how you feel.
I love that. It's about empowering ourselves to make informed choices. This brings up another question. If these pairings are so common, why haven't we heard about these issues before? Why isn't this more widely known?
That's a great point. It makes you wonder how much of what we believe about food is based on tradition or cultural norms or even marketing, rather than scientific evidence. We often just inherit food habits from our families and communities without really questioning them. And sometimes those habits are beneficial, but sometimes they might not be serving us as well as we think.
That's so true. It's like we're programmed to eat certain things together without even thinking about it. But this deep dive has definitely made me more aware and more curious to explore further. I'm already thinking about other food combinations that I've always taken for granted. What about you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. This has definitely sparked my curiosity too. It makes you wonder about the potential benefits of certain food pairings as well. We've been focusing on what to avoid, but what about combinations that can actually enhance nutrient absorption or promote gut health? There's so much to explore.
That's a brilliant point. So it's not just about avoiding the bad, but also actively seeking out the good. It's like we're food detectives uncovering the secrets of optimal nutrition. But where do we even begin? Are there any resources you'd recommend for listeners who want to dive deeper into this world of food synergy?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a wealth of information out there. For starters, I'd recommend looking into the concept of food combining, which focuses on pairing foods in a way that supports digestion and nutrient absorption. There are some great books and websites dedicated to this topic. One that comes to mind is The Food Combining Diet by Dr. Herbert Shelton. It's a classic in the field, and it gives you a really comprehensive guide to the principles of food combining.
Okay, I'll definitely check that out. But for our listeners who are maybe a little less bookish, are there any simpler ways to start incorporating these ideas into their lives? Any practical tips or tricks?
Definitely. A great place to start is just by paying attention to how you feel after you eat certain food combinations. If you notice that you're consistently bloated or uncomfortable after a particular pairing, it might be worth experimenting with separating those foods or maybe eating them at different times. It's really about tuning into your body's signals and figuring out what works best for you.
That's such valuable advice. It's about becoming more mindful of our eating habits and treating our bodies with respect.
Exactly. Our bodies are incredibly intelligent, and they give us clues all the time about what's working and what's not. It's just a matter of paying attention and making adjustments as needed.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like I've learned so much about this hidden world of food pairings and the importance of listening to our bodies. But before we wrap up, I have to ask, what's one final thought-provoking question that you think our listeners should ponder as they go about their day?
Ooh, that is a great question. Let me think. So if we've been taking these milk pairings for granted for so long, what other common food beliefs might we need to re-examine? Like, what else out there are we just assuming is okay?
Wow, that is a good one. It really makes you stop and think about all the stuff we just do automatically without even questioning it.
Right, like we grow up with all these food traditions and habits, and we just assume they're fine, but maybe some of them aren't so good for us.
Exactly. It's a real call to be more curious about what we're eating and how it affects our bodies. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. I feel like I've learned so much about these surprising milk pairings and the whole idea of food synergy, and most importantly, the importance of listening to our bodies. It's been a really enlightening deep dive.
It really has. I think the biggest takeaway for me is that there's always more to learn about food and nutrition. And the more we understand, the better choices we can make for ourselves.
Absolutely. Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the world of milk pairings. We hope you enjoyed this journey with us and that it's inspired you to be a little more mindful about your own food choices.
And remember, it's all about experimenting and finding what works best for you. So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those taste buds happy.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So until next time, happy eating and happy deep diving.